Yeah, we know wrestling isn't really a competitive sport. Honestly, it's more like pairs figure skating, two people working together to put on a breathtaking performance. Could you imagine going up to Harley Race and being like, it's like figure skating, right? But yeah, just like a skater literally trusts their partner with their life as they spin them upside down while racing across the ice, not to mention something even more risky like the Pamchenko twist, toe pick, so too do professional wrestlers trust their opponent with their livelihood. And when someone starts playing fast and loose with the approved in-ring etiquette, it can be a bad scene. I'm Senior Siete for 7 Wrestling. Let's take a look at 7 times WWE wrestlers were real jerks in the ring. Now, before we get into this, we appreciate your support, so if you enjoy this video, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and Alabama slam that notification bell. Also, we've got shirts. Check out the links below if you want to show off your 7 Wrestling pride or if you just want to support the channel. Number 1. Giant mistake. If you had purchased a ticket to see a WWF event in the fall of 1989, you might have gone home very displeased. The main event for this run of shows was very enticing, with the Ultimate Warrior defending his Intercontinental title against Andre the Giant, and many of the matches lasted less than a minute long. In one match that took place in Madison Square Garden, the Warrior hit Andre with 3 clotheslines, followed it up with a splash, and got the 3 count. And keep in mind, that's your main event. Seriously, they're making Goldberg and Brock Lesnar look like an Iron Man match. My understanding is that Andre was reaching the end of his full-time active career, and he simply wasn't able to go much longer than that in a singles match. What's worse is that according to Andre's manager, Bobby the Brain Heenan, the Giant couldn't stand the face-painted heir apparent. One incident in particular stands out in that Andre liked to do a spot where he'd receive a clothesline and then fall back into the ropes and accidentally get tied up. But the Warrior kept coming at him at 100 miles an hour and hit Andre as hard as he could. This happened twice before the 8th wonder of the world took matters into his own hands, or hand, as it were. On the 3rd night, when the Warrior came barreling at Andre at full speed, the Giant simply put up his fist and knocked the Warrior for a loop. The following night, the Warrior did the spot as it was intended, and as Andre took his place, wrapped up in the ropes, he turned to his manager, Bobby Heenan, and simply said, "He's learning." Number 2. Heartbreak Fit. Okay, it's time for me to go into one of my patented, "I'm old, where is the time gone" rants. I just did the math, and the old, arrogant prima donna Shawn Michaels retired after dropping the world title to Stone Cold Steve Austin at WrestleMania 14, and that was 26 years ago. And if you grew up with the Shawn Michaels that had Bible verses on his gear, or even the one today that's helping guide the youth of the business at NXT, then you and I know 2 very different heartbreak kids. My Shawn Michaels apparently set records for drug and alcohol consumption to the degree that Triple H would tell stories about how him and Chyna would need to put him to bed at night in a manner that would keep him safe in case he vomited in his sleep, then setting alarms so they could check on Michaels throughout the night. My Shawn Michaels was the one that was such a jerk that he insisted on winning the European title, a title that meant next to nothing, mind you, on the same night Davey Boy Smith had dedicated their match to his sister Tracy, who was battling cancer at the time. My Shawn Michaels enjoyed some sunny days while she was still with Chris Candido. But when he was in the ring, wow, nobody did it better. We're going to disagree with our taste in wrestling, our taste in wrestlers, and so on, but know that Bret and Shawn are my 1 and 1A. How lucky was I to get to watch the 2 of them when I was growing up? But unfortunately, Shawn's unprofessionalism wasn't just kept backstage. One example of this that happened live on pay-per-view was when Michaels was defending the WWF title against the man they call Vader in the main event of SummerSlam 1996. During the bout, Vader would be down on the mat and Michaels would go to the top for his signature elbow drop. Apparently, Vader was out of position or something and Michaels would fly down, land on his feet, then stomp Vader in the head, hard. He'd then proceed to berate the Mastodon and then stomp him a second time. Years later, Jim Cornette would say that Vader was supposed to move during this elbow drop and screwed it up, like millions of things that probably get screwed up over the course of a wrestling match. In hindsight, Shawn was lucky that he was the top guy and that Vader was worried he'd get fired if he squashed him like a bedazzled chap-wearing bug. We'd learn years later that business had not improved under Shawn Michaels' title reign, and the pressure was starting to get to him. Fortunately, Shawn Michaels would grow up quite a bit over the years, and he would never again, number 3, powerhouse of the cell. Hey! It's HBK 2.0. For those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about here, Shawn would retire after WrestleMania 14 due to a back injury he sustained during a casket match against The Undertaker at that year's Royal Rumble. And honestly, it was the best thing that ever happened to him. While he was away, he met the love of his life, Rebecca. They married and had 2 kids. She helped him clean up his drug and alcohol use. He found religion. And it seemed like the Shawn Michaels who terrorized the WWE backstage area was long gone. He'd return at SummerSlam 2002 in a street fight against Triple H, and honestly, we weren't expecting much, but boy did those two blow away all expectations. Now, some people would make the argument that the HBK of old was lurking in there somewhere and would occasionally poke his head out, but for the most part, he was seen as a model WWE citizen. Michaels would have a series of amazing bouts against Kurt Angle, Chris Jericho, some other guy, but there was one dream match that had never happened, and that the company thought could bring in big bucks. Shawn Michaels versus Hulk Hogan. 2 former icons of the company, the leader of the NWO against the head of D-Generation X. It was perfect. So, Shawn Michaels turned on the Hulkster after a tag team match on the July 4th, 2005 episode of Monday Night Raw. Oh, turning on the real American on his nation's birthday? That's low. During the post-match victory celebration, Hogan would turn into a sweet chin music, thus adding Michaels to a very impressive list of friends who have betrayed the paragon of Hulkamania. Over the build to SummerSlam, people would talk about this being the revival of the old Shawn Michaels. He would return to the scene of his most heinous crime, Montreal, Quebec, Canada, and berate the audience and even tease an appearance by the hero Bret Hart. And mind you, this was years before Bret and Shawn would mend fences. He would imitate the Hulkster in a fake version of Larry King Live. This segment is notable for Michaels saying brother 65 times, and believe us, because we counted, although it's possible we missed some. And know that we fully condone the overuse of the word brother. Obviously. He would even blur the lines between storyline and reality by doing things like calling out Hogan for not working smaller towns, not working particularly hard in the ring, and politicking to get his way. He'd even play into the statement that led to the Montreal Screwjob when he said, "Hulk Hogan, I won't lie down for you." Now, whether or not this is based on reality or not, it was all part of the show, approved of as part of the storyline, so we're not going to ding Michaels for being unprofessional here. What does put him on this list for a second time is what happened during the actual match. Now, if you're unfamiliar with the rules of YouTube, you need to know that I'm not allowed to show very much of this match, so I'm hoping these screenshots can get across how insane it was. You see, Michaels decided to put on a masterclass in overselling, so this looked less like a wrestling match and more like what would happen if you hit a ping pong ball with a Mack truck. A simple shoulder tackle would send Michaels flying out of the ring. Hogan ramming Michaels' head into the turnbuckle would result in Michaels doing a full flip. When Michaels would be hit with Hogan's trademark big boot, instead of just taking a back bump like every other wrestler since the beginning of time, Michaels would bump, stand up, run in a circle, then bump again. Actually, I do need to show this one. Yeah, it was ridiculous. Now, the story that has since come out is that it was originally planned to be a series of matches with Hogan winning the first and them trading victories down the line. But by the time they hit the ring, that didn't work for Hogan, brother, and they were just going to do the one. So, Michaels gave him the old Super Bowl treatment and then immediately went back to being a model citizen. Number 4, worked into a shoot, brother. We're going to take a step outside of the WWE for this one, but it definitely involves 2 talents that WWE fans are familiar with, Austin Aries and John Morrison, Nitro, Impact, etc. Now, what would be the opposite of what Shawn Michaels did? Shawn would make Hogan's offense look ridiculously powerful, and the opposite of that is Austin Aries making Johnny Impact's finish look ridiculously lame. In the closing moments of their 2018 Bound for Glory main event, Johnny Impact would hit his split-legged twisting moonsault finish on Austin Aries and pin him for the Impact World Championship. Aries would take a beat, then roll up to his feet as if nothing had happened, and then exit the ring while flipping off the fans. At the time, fans and wrestlers alike were livid that Aries would do something like this to expose the business and steal the thunder from Impact's long-awaited title victory. But this one has a bit of a second act to it. Aries would later claim that it was all a setup, that the plan was to use this to build to a rematch between he and Impact. He made the point that in this post-kayfabe era, you need to fool not only the fans in attendance, but the wrestlers in the back who were feeding information to writers like Dave Meltzer. And when Johnny Impact was asked about the match later in an interview with Chris Van Vliet, he didn't take the opportunity to throw Aries under the bus. In fact, he was very non-committal over what had taken place, which to me lends some credence to Aries' claim. The problem with all of this is that Aries left Impact Wrestling and never returned, so there was absolutely zero follow-up, which begs the question, even if Impact was aware of the controversial ending, does that make it any better? To end a show with a big victory that is immediately overshadowed by something that telegraphs the fact that everything we've been seeing is predetermined seems crazy. Not that Impact Wrestling hasn't been guilty of dumb decisions before, so maybe this doesn't belong on this list at all. Maybe Aries wasn't a jerk that night and went along with a plan that he and Johnny Impact had discussed beforehand. But the thought process that went into it wasn't half as clever as they thought it was. It got people talking, but for the wrong reasons. Number 5. Play stupid games. Who doesn't love this modern, fun dad Randy Orton? He's put on a few pounds, he's smiling and slapping hands on the way to the ring, and when he squares off against a young talent like Javon Evans, and Javon misses up the finish to the match, he picks him up and says, "It's alright, you're the bleeping man. No, Randy, you're the man." A respectful leader in the locker room that all of tomorrow's future superstars can look up to, but he didn't used to be that guy. Randy wasn't quite at 1997 Shawn Michaels levels of arrogance, but he was definitely giving him some competition. Now, there are incidents like with former diva Rochelle Owen that was set off when Rochelle, who wasn't a wrestling fan prior to joining the company, didn't know who Randy was. This led to him verbally abusing her and destroying her belongings by smearing them with self-tanning lotion and baby oil. There was former WWE writer Court Bauer, who would detail the unique manner in which Randy would offer handshakes to new employees. Apparently, he would pull out his Viper, touch it a little bit, and then extend his hand. Oh, and there was the time he was sent home from a European tour after trashing a hotel room to the tune of $50,000. Seriously, I need to see an itemized list on how they got that number. I'm not saying it's impossible, I'm just saying it's interesting. Sorry, getting back on track. In 2009, Randy Orton was having a career year, having main evented WrestleMania, had a long feud with John Cena. He was transitioning into a new feud with Kofi Kingston that would hopefully propel the fake Jamaican into the main event. And you know a feud is hot when a dude wrecks your personalized NASCAR. Things seem to be progressing nicely, with Kofi being the sole survivor in a Survivor Series match that saw him defeating both Randy Orton and CM Punk in a 2-1 situation, but it would all come to a screeching halt on the January 11th, 2010 episode of Monday Night Raw, when Randy Orton and Kofi Kingston would participate in a triple threat match against John Cena. Towards the end of the bout, Kingston was supposed to stay on all fours so Orton could hit him with his trademark punt kick, but Kofi was confused and instead stood up for the RKO. Randy would connect with the move and then stand up screaming, "Stupid, stupid," at Kingston before picking up the pinfall. It is believed that afterwards, Randy used his political pull to have Kingston's push halted. Adding some credence to this rumor is the fact that 10 years later, when Kofi finally did make it to the main event due to the Kofi Mania phenomena, he and Orton would have this tweet exchange. Orton would say, "Can't wait. 3 of my 13 world title reigns started at SummerSlam, soon to be 4, to which Kingston would reply, "Please, I'm not the same kid you buried in 2009. SummerSlam will be very different. Stupidly different." It seems the two have managed to put this behind them, as not only were they able to work together, but they even integrated it into a bout with Kofi, giving Randy a well-deserved berating. And that's good for Javon, because this looks way worse than this. Number 6. Phoenix stuns. Here at 7 Wrestling, we are big Jade Cargill fans. Actually, that might not be completely accurate. We're big fans of Jade Cargill's potential. I mean, look at her. She's like what would happen if a goddess and a rock star had a baby. She's visual perfection. Her character's pretty cool too. Now, if she can get her in-ring work to the level where she can hang in singles matches with Rhea Ripley, Bianca Belair, and Tiffany Stratton, then she can truly become something special. And her finish, Jaded, it's already pretty damn cool. She hoists her opponent up in the air with their arms hooked, walking them around for all to see, then she grasps their waists and slams them face down into the mat. Now, if you're unfamiliar with how wrestling works, here's a quick lesson. When you take a fall or a bump on the mat, the goal is to have as much surface area as possible to cushion the blow. That's why wrestlers tend to fall flat on their back, or when they fall forward, they extend their legs and hold out their arms. Also, in the case of falling forwards, you can use your arms so you don't fall flat on your face, which, is important. Now, if you're thinking you've seen Jade Cargill's Jaded move before, it's probably because it was the finishing maneuver for another muscular supermodel. But back then it was known as the Glam Slam, and it was performed by Beth Phoenix. Known as the Glamazon, Beth Phoenix was one of the highlights of the late 2000s and early 2010s. She was gorgeous, intimidating, she had an amazing build, and she could get the job done in the ring. But one incident that raised questions about her professionalism is what happened on the February 3rd, 2010 episode of SmackDown. During the ending of the match, Phoenix would lift Michelle McCool for the Glam Slam and then fail to release her arms. This left McCool with no way to protect her face before the considerable impact. And the result was McCool suffering a concussion. Years later, Michelle would discuss the incident during an Instagram Live interview where she would say, "Well, she didn't unhook my arms, don't know why. She definitely knew how because she's had plenty of matches and ended up giving me a concussion. I actually let it go, and then years after that in the WWE magazine, she made a comment about it, and I was like, oh, so she did know what she did. Okay." But I guess just a couple of weeks ago on Twitter, people posted that finish, so that led to a lot of people asking. Well, I guess her answer to everybody asking, why didn't you unhook her arms? Her answer was, well, there's more to the story. I was like, oh, I'd like to know what are the sides of the story. I reached out personally, not on social media, not to blast it to millions and millions of fans, basically saying, I would love to know the rest of the story. Now, apparently Phoenix's response was that they should be grateful for the time in the ring together, which isn't an actual answer. Michelle would never get the other side of the story, as Beth Phoenix has since unfollowed her on Instagram, which, may hurt even more than an unprotected Glam Slam. Number 7. Herculean Task. Everybody on a wrestling show plays a role. Sometimes you're the one who gets to look good. Sometimes you're the one whose job it is to make other guys look good. And in 1992, it was definitely the job of Hercules Hernandez to make other people look good. For full context, know that Hercules was at best a middle-of-the-card talent. He was never that hated. He was never that loved. And I don't believe he ever seriously contended for a title. He had recently been in a tag team with Paul Roma that was known as Power and Glory, but Roma left the company after the previous year's SummerSlam. So he was losing a lot. That was his role at the time. And apparently, his frustration with that role came to a head when he was scheduled to face Sid at Madison Square Garden on February 23rd, 1992. At the time, Sid was being booked as a complete monster as he was scheduled to face Hulk Hogan in the main event of that year's WrestleMania. It's a pretty simple formula. You build up the heel for Hogan to face, the better built the heel, the higher the gate. But apparently Hercules just did not care. After a quick match, Sid would hit Hercules with his powerbomb finisher, and Herc would give it the old Austin Aries treatment. Needless to say, he wasn't with the company much longer after that. Well, there's our list. Did we forget any other wrestlers who were real jerks in the ring? If so, please leave them in the comments section below. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and double underhook powerbomb that notification bell. Until next time, I'm Singer Siete for 7 Wrestling saying bye-bye.